Time to talk some college football, and there's no bigger news right now that just came down yesterday with Jim Harbaugh. I can't believe it. The Chargers actually got him. They didn't charger it up and screw it up. So Harbaugh's going to the NFL. I'll ask you, because I've heard no one talk about this. College football can be a wonderful place. Harbaugh has been controversial, but he was at his alma mater. Is he making a mistake getting out and going to the NFL?
I don't think so. Honestly, I think this might be the right move for him. Remember, we're talking about a guy. How many games did he coach this year? 7? 6, 8 games maybe he coached this year. And yes, they won a national championship, but at the end of the day, the stuff that he liked doing, they got in trouble for. So it's one of those things where you have to kind of, measure, you got to count your plums. And for him, most of his plums are in the basket of, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And the NFL gives you a lot more space and a lot more grace to do whatever you want to do.
How would you describe him as a coach? I mean, you played the game. You've covered a lot of coaches. How would you describe him as a coach in terms of his approach? And I wonder how Justin Herbert's a pretty unique guy. He's not a super outgoing guy publicly. And I wonder how that's going to mesh. I mean, Herbert's awesome talent-wise, but now he's got to get to the next step. And now Harbaugh's got a great quarterback to work with in the NFL.
Can you describe my face as you said that question to me, to people?
Well, you went very pensive, so was it a negative face? I couldn't tell.
I think they're both fine.
Okay.
I think they're fine. I think Herbert is a very good talent. I can't get the image out of my head of him throwing the ball, 10 yards out of the end zone against Auburn. But at the end of the day, I also can't get this cumulative track sheet of Harbaugh not being able to develop quarterbacks. And if J.J. McCarthy is his best developed quarterback, we might have a problem because...
Well, I think we have to give him credit, right? Now, Colin Kaepernick was treated like crap by the NFL and booted from the league. Yes. I mean, that is a guy he developed.
I don't know if that's the case. The same thing with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was just good.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that's going to be interesting is to see. I want to watch him develop a quarterback. And I say the same thing. I don't mean to get us off track, but I say the same thing with Lincoln Riley.
I know.
How good is Caleb Williams going to be? So I don't think I'm being mean when I say that.
Yeah, it's interesting because you remember probably 6 weeks ago, I don't know if I threw it at you. I think I did. Yeah, we had the discussion about Lincoln Riley, and I thought he would get a bunch of NFL interviews, and maybe his people or he said directly, you know what, I'm not interested. Because it's interesting. Carolina just hired Dave Canales, who's a young guy, OC, and Lincoln Riley didn't really get conversations, but maybe it goes back to your point. Maybe there's not as much confidence around the NFL and Lincoln Riley. So I guess I was wrong on that one.
I know. I was rooting for Ben Johnson to get the job anyways. Ben Johnson, played football with him in college. I love that guy. Good dude. AC Reynolds, he's from North Carolina. I thought he was going to get it. Obviously he doesn't. But to go back to the point, I do think that Lincoln, Baker made, it feels a lot like Urban Meyer. Where Urban Meyer, Alex Smith had to unlearn all of that stuff, Dan Mullen, Urban Meyer stuff. He had to unlearn all of it to get okay in the NFL.
Wow.
And I think the same thing works with Baker Mayfield, where Baker Mayfield was playing scout team defensive end, a year ago. And he had to unlearn all the stuff that Lincoln taught him, or all the stuff that Lincoln let him do to finally become an NFL quarterback. And I think Caleb Williams is the same way. I went through and I went through every Caleb Williams touchdown. There are 2 that are on platform, 2 that are absolutely a play. The rest are, I'll figure it out and we'll make it work. And the wide receiver goes. But there's 2 really good plays, and I love those plays. And if you can get them to do those plays, that's the part that I really like about it.
Michael Felder's with us at In the Bleachers up on Twitter, Bleacher Report, Learfield. All right, the other side of Michigan. I guess I have to wait a couple of days from a legal standpoint. Is it automatically Sherrone Moore? Do they go outside the program? And I wonder what Moore does in negotiations. I don't think this is as simple as, hey, you know what? I want the job. I haven't had a job. So anything you want to do. I mean, I certainly would want to negotiate some extra time in on the contract for post Harbaugh in case the NCAA comes down and smashes Michigan.
Yeah, I think you're spot on that. I want more time. I want to make sure that his failings don't reflect on what I'm going to do as a coach. And then I also think that, like, hey man, I want this guaranteed money. Like, if Mel Tucker could get $97 million or whatever it was,
Yep.
I want something that's in that world. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how much money he gets guaranteed, how much he gets with respect to sanctions. Because here's the thing: if there are sanctions, and then you give 2-year sanctions or 3-year sanctions, I want my contract to start after that. I want my money guaranteed during it, but I want my contract to start after that. Because I'm not going to set up here and let you just take it away from me, and then this job becomes desirable to, I don't know if it's Brian Kelly or if it's whoever. I don't want this job to become desirable to them while I do all the dirty work.
And I will mention, these jobs are not easy.
Yeah.
These historic college football jobs, for another reason, he's African-American. And I believe he'll be the first African-American coach at Michigan. And I know people hate talking about this, but there is a reality when you go in and there's a history of none of you coaching those positions. There are some fans who are going to be a lot harder on you than they were on whoever, Brady Hoke, who turned out to not be so great.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through the list, right? UNC never had an African American head coach. That's where I played at. Hasn't happened. I don't think it will happen. Auburn, no chance. Alabama, no. What? Georgia, what? Of course not. And so, but then you look at Kansas, with my man from Turner Gill. Colorado's had, what is it, 3 in a row? No, 2, 1, 1. But Colorado's had, without the Mike McIntyre blip, like they've had three black head coaches, and it is important because the players that are playing there, they look like you. You understand their life. You understand how they fit. UCLA with Durrell. Yeah, okay. It's a very, I guess people from outside, when they look in, they don't understand that it can matter because they spend so much time, college football programs spend so much time sending defensive back coach, running back coach, wide receiver coach into places where the other guy wouldn't be accepted. And so they want to be like, yeah, we're a part of the culture. We're a part of this. We're a part of that. But you don't give that guy the chance to lead the program. And that's the part I'm going to be very interested in. Obviously, Coach Prime is a different world with respect to this. But LSU, Oklahoma, Texas with Charlie Strong was very interesting because I said interesting. I didn't say anything wrong. I said interesting. But yes, they send these guys out, and at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, he couldn't get the job done. Auburn is the end all to be all, like just no interest. So it's because of the boosters. So, and I'm overstepping, and I feel really bad because Auburn fans are gonna text me and be like,
well, you know what? Too bad. Reality is reality. I mean, we saw the good example. You mentioned Texas with Charlie Strong. Red McCombs, who was 1,000 years old at the time, was like, he's an assistant coach, maybe a coordinator, but not the head coach of the Longhorns. Yeah, that thought is pervasive in certain college markets.
Yes, absolutely. So it's just frustrating. It is frustrating, and it's frustrating, and you have to figure out a way to make it work. So I'm excited for this.
A couple of big victories on the recruiting trail. Well, first of all, it's been a gigantic set of victories for Ryan Day. Ryan Day, I thought he went out kind of whining. I don't like him or Matt Rule talking about the budget they need, but guess what? Ryan Day got the budget, and now he's killed it on the transfer portal. And now he already won at the back end with a super senior in Will Howard, and then he basically steals Sayin, who's now I think when I was looking at the transfer portal list for quarterbacks, I think he was number 1 on the list. So we got him. How about the victory over Georgia? We had talked about this last week with Alabama's safety. So he's just killed it. I wonder how big a favorite, because the numbers aren't out yet. Now that Harbaugh's gone, I wonder how big a favorite in the Big Ten Ohio State is going to be. And can I say something?
Yeah.
When people grade Ryan Day, and I'm not a big fan of his, but when they grade him and what he's done the last 3 years on one game, the Michigan game, that is kind of stupid. Like people talk about him like they've dropped to a 7-win program. They have not.
Right. So here's two things. I think it is stupid to talk about him that way. 100% agree. I think he did a great job on the recruiting trail. Obviously, Caleb Downs, you throw in the Salem kid. Like, he's got 2 kids from Alabama that are just, let's go. But he also has like a bunch of kids transferring out. But the big thing for me, and I will say this nonstop, I don't know how to say it, actually. CJ Stroud is better in the NFL than he was at Ohio State.
Oh. I thought it was going to be a big endorsement.
I think, that's why I was like, I don't know how to say this.
Yes.
Ryan Day has too much control. He shouldn't control this much. You throw McLaughlin in there as well along the offensive line that he got, but he shouldn't. If they would have won a national championship, if he would have just let CJ Stroud cook. Let my man cook. Let him do his thing. Don't wave. Don't call a timeout. Don't wait. Just let this man cook. And if you would have just let him cook, you could have won a national championship.
Yeah.
And that, to me, speaks volumes because you're talking about the positive. I'm looking at the negative, and I'm looking at the negative. I'm looking at Kyle McCord transferred to Syracuse to get away from you.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
How about the other great touche? We didn't mention Ryan Day brings in all these great transfers, and then he brings in a coach transfer, Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
And I saw the numbers the other day. I can't remember exactly what it was, but all the time he spent with the Patriots in Alabama, when he was at those spots, they never won the championship. Like, how was that even possible that he didn't get a ring? Because he wasn't there for like a year. He was at those places for multiple years. I'm not saying it was his fault.
No, I was going to say it's not his fault.
He's a really interesting character, and obviously Jalen Milroe had no problem coming out and mother blanking him publicly.
Yes, big time.
Right?
So he's Bill, but he's also controlling, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a super controlling guy. So what do? If you're a controlling guy, you bring another controlling guy in, and now you guys get to control everything. And I think control is important because control also limits. And I'll say this: I have a 5-year-old. And my wife is a teacher, my parents are teachers, and control is important because you want to steer them down this path that gets them to the next level. But it also makes it so they don't make mistakes, and so that mistakes are your mistakes. And that's the part that's going to be really interesting with Bill O'Brien, with Ryan Day, because these kids have to make mistakes. The mistakes are what allow them to understand, I've got to put the ball here, or I need to throw a 2 ball instead of a 1 ball. I need to make sure that I check my backside. I need to make sure I do all these things. And if you have too much control, that's a problem. And that's what I think about with this all the time. Like, my parents let me make mistakes. I'm not going to say I'm successful at all.
You are.
But at the end of the day, they let me make mistakes. And when I made mistakes, they sat me down at that kitchen table. And that's the thing I love about Nick Saban, by the way. That's the thing I loved about him. He set his guys down at that kitchen table, the proverbial kitchen table, and he said, hey, so did you think it was a good idea when you went out at night? Did you think it was a good idea when you threw that ball to him? Did you think it was a good idea when you went half speed? And I think those mistakes are what build the foundation of a quality football team.
Michael Felder's with us. Sign up for his newsletter. Comes out a couple times a week, includes a podcast, multiple podcasts. Yeah. It's Felder at Substack.com. All right. Rapid fire here on some college football notes. I don't know if there's a media person who covers college football who loves the transfer portal as much as I do, but I'm gonna back off on this one. I do like the fact that Noah Fafita decided to stay at Arizona, and now Will Rogers is going to join Jed Fish's Washington program. This is a big score for Jed Fish, and I think it shows his ability to schmooze and recruit.
How long has Will Rogers been in college? How long?
Just short of the Miami tight end, who I think got his 9th year of eligibility.
Yes, 9th year. Excuse me, for him. Good grief. I will say this: I'm very excited to watch Noah Rogers. Going to NC State from Ohio State, I'm excited to watch him. Obviously, we mentioned Caleb McCord already. I'm excited to watch both of those guys, and then we throw McLaughlin. I think the Trainium kid going to Kentucky is awesome. It's going to be really cool. You throw in what is it? Reed. Hang on, Reed Carico.
I was like, too many guys to keep track of.
Going to West Virginia. Yeah, there's so many guys.
Yeah.
And it just is, there's so many guys, and you have to pay attention to all of them. And it's the other part, and I will say this. People aren't going to like it, but I'm going to say it. I am also very worried and concerned about these guys with degree progress. I was talking to a friend of mine who works in admin in college, and they were talking about how your credits transfer. And if your credits don't transfer, there are guys that are seniors now that become sophomores.
Oh, wow.
And that's one of the things that I really do worry about. And we've never talked about it. It's never been discussed, but I'm really worried about those guys because when I played it at UNC, we had a guy, Gerald Sensabaugh. He transferred from East Tennessee State to UNC. He was a senior. He was going to graduate that semester. They bumped him back down to a sophomore. And I think a lot of these guys are going to have to go through that. And I know you can always go back to school, and the school's not going to be anywhere. You can always go back to that school. But degree progress is super important.
So explain that further for 1 second. Does that happen when you're going up in terms of academic schools?
Yes.
Or can it happen both ways?
It depends on the school, but yeah, it usually happens when you go up. So if you go from East Tennessee State to UNC, they don't transfer your credits. Like if you're Kyle Hamilton, you go from Northwestern to Notre Dame, or if you're somebody like that, like if you go from Northwestern to Notre Dame, they're going to be like, okay, yes, got it. But if you're going from, even if you're looking to get your sports journalism degree, right? And you go from Ohio State to Syracuse, guess what? Syracuse is like, no. Mm-hmm. We have a very robust broadcast journalism program. It's not the same. And so that's what I'm looking at, how they move, because it's one of those things where you're like, yo, man, it's not the same. And that's a hard thing to, like, Noah Rogers is probably going to be okay going from Ohio State, which is in theory an ag school, to NC State, which is also an ag school. But guys that are moving from an ag school to a liberal arts school, they're not going to have the same. It's not going to be the same for them. And it's really rough. And then what do? You have to go back to school to get this and do that. And it's same thing with private school versus public school. With public school, Ohio State, Syracuse is a private school. So there's all those things are on the table. And it's very interesting. Like Judkins, right? Going from Ole Miss to Ohio State. It's not going to be the same. And I don't think we've done enough discussion on that, honestly.
Michael Felder's with us. All right, let's close out on these final notes. I also think the transfer portal is wonderful for this. Sometimes reality hits. And in the case of Chuba Purdy, like, nice effort. You go to Florida State, you go to Nebraska, you don't get playing time. All right, it's time to deal with reality. Go play, right? So he's actually landed at Nevada. But my question, so he'll be in the Mountain West. My question on Chuba Purdy, Brock Purdy's younger brother, is, can he play?
I liked him coming out of high school, man. I really did. Like, I remember we did a show called Emerge on Stadium, and I really liked him. Kid's from Arizona, moves around. He can throw a little bit. Like, I liked him a lot. But you never know. And I guess that's the part that's really hard is, and I don't think people think about this a lot, but, like, once you step into that world, there are three things that I'll say. Work ethic, team dynamic, and system, right? So work ethic, you can control your work ethic. System, you're not in charge of that at all. You have nothing, there's nothing you can do about it. You can hope the coach you can hope that the coach steers it in a way that you like. And then team dynamic. And I think that's the most interesting part, whether it's, you think about Hunter Johnson when he went to Clemson, right? This is a kid coming from Carmel, whatever you call it, I don't know, Indiana, going to South Carolina. South Carolina, guess what? You got a bunch of guys from South Carolina. You got a bunch of guys from Georgia. These are dogs. dogs. You've never played with dogs like this in your life. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to handle these dudes. And I'll be blunt. It's a bunch of black dudes from South Carolina and Georgia, and he'd never been around anybody like that in his life. And it was hard. And then he went to Northwestern, and things were better for him.
Yeah. I saw him up close. I was like, I can't believe he landed at Clemson. Like he was a serviceable quarterback, but even at Northwestern, he wasn't.
I loved him. I loved him coming out. He had all the tools. It just was as we said when we shot the video, like, this is the guy you want to date your daughter. But it also was like, yo, you get in there in that locker room with them dogs. The difference between him and Trevor Lawrence, I don't think it was hugely on the field. It was hugely Trevor Lawrence grew up with guys that looked like this, grew up with guys that played like this. And it's a different world. Mm-hmm. And then the other one, what did I say? I said effort. I said environment. That's it. I did all three, right? I did all three.
Yes.
There we go. But it's just one of those things, like, you've got to, and sometimes, like Bo Nix is used to that world. But Bo Nix also thrived in a different world. He had to move out to move up. And I think that's the interesting part of it here. But if you want to step into a cage with these guys, you better be ready to rock and roll. Trevor Lawrence was ready to rock and roll. Deshaun Watson was ready to rock and roll. Hunter Johnson was not. Jalen Milroe, also someone who's ready to rock and roll, like Jalen Hurts, ready to rock and roll. Bryce Young had to make himself prepared to go out there and get it, to step into that environment. And I just want to make sure that people understand this isn't even a race thing. This is about, because there are some tough white dudes that Cam Newton had to control. There are some tough black dudes that we've seen Josh Allen be able to understand, relate to, and go out and make plays. It's about being a dog. And Deion Sanders, obviously, he puts captain and he puts dog, and dogs understand what they're supposed to do. And that's the part to me that's the most interesting, because you can be the best player in the world, but DJ Uiagalelei, he was not set up for that environment. He was not set up for that environment. And then he gets to Oregon State and he can control that. He can understand it. He can handle it. And I think that's really important as a way to talk about football. And I'm about to do a show in about 20 minutes with my guy, Daniel Palmer. And he played football at Columbia. And he was like, yo, at Columbia, we don't have a lot of dogs. But the guys that we had that were dogs, guess what? Somebody had to be in charge. And that's a part of football I don't think we talk about nearly enough. It's a violent and threatening game. And if you're not going to be violent and you're not going to be threatening and you're not going to just fight hard, it makes it a lot harder. And there has to be a way. There needs to be an alpha. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. The life of It's Felder. Again, you can go to It's Felder at Substack. You did go to a hockey game. I was intrigued by that because of the arena. I was in Charlotte working for about 9 months back. I don't know when it was now, 2001 or 2. And I went to, it's still Bojangles?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I went to Bojangles. I saw a UFC event there in 2010. And it also brings up the fact that Bojangles is actually coming to Las Vegas. They're going to open 20 of their restaurants here. I am so looking forward to Bojangles in Las Vegas.
Oh, you're gonna love it, dude. They're gonna love it too. It's gonna take the city by storm. Bojangles is great. I have to stop myself from eating it. Like, if we're being honest, it's so good. It's the best chicken sandwich in the business. The chicken. Don't get the chicken sandwich. Get the chicken biscuit.
Hello.
The chicken biscuit is the best chicken sandwich in the game. Screw you, Chick-fil-A. Screw you, Popeyes. I'm saying it. I stand on business. This is the one. This is the best chicken sandwich in the game. The Bojangles spicy chicken sandwich will get you where you need to go. It's way better than all the other ones, and I love it. And so, yeah, I love Bojangles, and I went there, and I will say this, and I know we got to go, but if you're a parent and you take your kid to a game, or a game or an event, anything, if you have a partner with you, leave the kid with your partner and go and buy the souvenirs by yourself, and do it at the start of the game or the event. Right. So you don't have to let the kid pick. You just pick 2 things. You bring them back. They're excited they got something. You don't have to haggle with them. for stuff. That's my rad dad moment. Is
There you go.
you pick something, you get two things, they're excited to have it. And what I usually do, Cofield, I get one thing that's going to be interactive for them, and I get one thing that's going to be a keepsake for them. And you're done.
Parenting 101 for Michael Felder, college football expert, and great advice up on It's Felder at Substack. Mike, appreciate it. We'll talk to you.
Always good, man. You take it easy.